decree that we would strike the ground, for you will give us victory. I hear a sound of abundance of rain. I hear a sound of victory. The Lord says it is done. The Lord says it is done. I hear a sound of abundance of rain. I hear a sound of victory. Angels are being
We have to keep it short because I don't want to get a copyright strike from that one. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is the new Protestant Pope.
Beth Moore.
Donald Trump just coronated her. Would that be how it is? Donald Trump he signed, I think, an executive order making her the Protestant Pope. So all of Protestantism has to submit
Bow to Beth Moore.
To Paula White and her crazy tongues.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's Paula White. Yeah.
Dr. Taylor Marshall returning on the show. What do you think of this new election of this woman to this office that Trump created?
Well, she wasn't elected. All you have to do is go on Twitter and Google, and you'll learn a lot real quick about Paula White. I think it's a horrible decision on the part of President Trump, because no Catholic is impressed by her. No Eastern Orthodox is impressed by her. No evangelical is impressed by her. No Calvinist Reformed is impressed by her. Everyone is pulling out their hair and their beard, looking at this. And you know who would have been the perfect selection, guys?
Who?
Bishop Strickland.
Yeah, 100%.
Epic.
Has plenty of free time. Catholics love him. Protestants love him. I mean, and it would have been the ultimate troll to Pope Francis to choose him and make him effectively the most powerful bishop in America. It would have been the best move ever, but he didn't do it.
We were talking when Trump first got the election, we were talking about great positions for Strickland, and somebody in our chat was like, he should make him the ambassador to the Vatican. Like, how freaking funny would it be if Strickland was the ambassador to the Vatican? It would have been amazing. Before we get into anything, please hit like, subscribe. You guys know the drill. We're going to do a local show tonight, and we're going to get into some early 2000s nostalgia, and we're going to talk about just the progression of how our worldviews have changed over time, and how Taylor was kind of at the forefront of that. And we'll get into some good stuff on locals. Taylor, what have you been up to? You got anything you wanted to throw out there to promote before we even get into this?
Yeah, my main line of work is over at the New St. Thomas Institute, and we have thousands of students. We're teaching Thomas Aquinas and St. Augustine and Mariology and the sacraments and the Latin Mass. So if you want to take an online course, head over to nsti.com. That's New St. Thomas Institute. And this week I just recorded a course on Lent. So it's a short course. It's a mini course just for the 46 days of Lent. So if you want to, get some Thomistic reflections and reflections about Our Lady and the history of Lent, and maybe upping your Lent and the history of fasting and abstinence and all these things, it's a great little micro course, and it's not available yet. But as we get closer to Ash Wednesday, we'll release that course. And I think it'll be really exciting for people who, want to take a quasi-academic class on the history of Lent and what Lent is and take it to the next level. So y'all can learn about that over at nsti.com, or just Google New St. Thomas Institute.
You present them all in videos too, right? Like they're video courses.
Yeah, it's videos. Yeah.
That's what's so amazing about it, because
it's like a YouTube, but it's more polished, goes deeper. It's the next level.
Yeah, because I was a subscriber to New St. Thomas Institute, and I would just drive into work listening to your courses.
Awesome.
They were amazing. So I wanted to get you on to actually ask you what are your thoughts on the first 3 weeks of Trump's presidency? Like, just in general, because we've had a lot of wins lately, and it's just to go from where we were to where we are. I wanted to just get a feel. I have some things I'm a little cautious about, and I wanted to see if you're kind of feeling the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give him a solid A. It's way more than I expected. I knew he'd be more aggressive this time because, they've just been beating him and spanking him for 4 years. And he's not a man to go down like that. So I knew if he got back in, he'd come back hard. But, I mean, he's come back so hard, like a lion. And, day one, I was actually in D.C. and saw the passing of the Born Alive Act, and there's Democrats in there, like, babies are born, survive abortion, they're laying in a pool of blood, they're screaming, and the Democrats in the House are like, that baby does not deserve health care. You're like, this is the Kamala Harris. This is the Kamala Harris Democratic Party. That's why they lost. Trump came in, You know, they're passing that. He defined life beginning at conception in that executive order. And then he's just been slamming executive orders. And then the thing that's really ticked everybody off is and we're going to talk about today, right?
Yeah.
All this taxpayer money going to the most ridiculous thing, like LGBT club in Armenia and, you know, trans opera in Peru. And just, this is our money being flushed down the toilet, laundered to all of these ridiculous causes. And sadly, we Catholics have been a bit ashamed lately, as we see Catholic Charities, Catholic Relief Services, USCCB, they're caught up in this as well. And I'm worried about the church in America, but I think it's necessary. I think this day has to come.
So, okay, so for months, we've been talking about, like, if Trump gets elected, it's one thing to start deporting people. Great. You know, it's also great if you close up the border. But if you don't shut these NGOs down, if you don't put an end to Catholic Charities, the way this government has had it structured for a very long time now, for over a decade, is they're feeding these people hundreds of millions of dollars, incentivizing them to, like, all those caravans we saw coming from South America, those were organized by these same NGOs that are claiming to help these people, right? So if we didn't do something about it, we knew this would just continue. So when I think the brightest spot of the past couple of weeks was when right before the JD Vance interview with the Ordo Amora stuff, and they were like, there's something going on with Catholic Charities here. And then JD Vance comes out and he's like, I think the U.S. bishops need to actually do a little self-reflection here. So to watch that whole thing go down was such an important thing. Like, I have people in my comments saying that I'm evil for wanting this to happen, but I think we're all at a point now where we're like, there's no more of the pretending that everything's fine. Like, there's only one way to fix this, and that's just to let every single thing come to light, let the bad actors get flushed out, and let's start anew somehow. It's so all right. So we're going to get into USAID tonight. Now, I watched your show yesterday on USAID, and I was watching you go through some of the most insane expenditures. Like, you were just talking about LGBT funding in Bangladesh and all this stuff. So I've been really digging into what all of that's about. And all of that stuff that we're funding, first off, it's a money laundering scheme, right? So they'll give 300 million to this LGBT fund in whatever country, and then 50 or 60% of it winds up coming back to America and getting funneled right back into democratic causes. Mm-hmm. A lot of it goes to media apparatuses. So like the Politico stuff that's coming out, that Politico is getting $8 million a year. They have this entire propaganda apparatus set up that they're funneling money out to other places, coming right back in. But the reason that we're pushing the DEI stuff in these other countries is to foment revolution. Yeah. So the whole idea is the CIA cannot. All right. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to give you guys kind of like a high school dropouts version of the things I've been watching Mike Benz do, because Mike Benz has been going through all the craziness of USAID. Now, USAID is not USAID. It's the United States Agency for International Development, which is a weird operation because it makes you think that they're out there helping the poor in other places. But what they're really doing is going into places the CIA can't be seen to go in. So they send these NGOs in, and the NGOs, places like Catholic Relief Services that you think are the charity arm of the U.S. bishops, are actually in these other countries fomenting revolution. So there's a reason why, like I watched you yesterday talking about the morality of some of the things that these outfits are doing, right? So like we're giving money to abortifacients, we're giving money to contraception, all these things. But the whole point of that is that comes with the package. If you want USAID grant money, you have no choice but to do these things. I mean, we've been watching Lepanto report on this stuff for how long? Michael's been going through all this stuff. And to find out that these are basically just intel agencies going into other countries to overturn their governments to make sure that they don't get populist movements in other places, I think is the most shocking thing. What did you find yesterday about? Do you have it handy, that the article you pulled up about having leverage over Pope Francis by any chance?
Yeah, I think I actually do. Let me see real quick. One of those articles was not allowed, but Forbes had deleted it. But here's the other one. I'll just read it real quick. I actually have it open still from yesterday. This is from the .gov website, and it says Mission Objective 2.2, and I'm reading directly from the site. Leverage Pope Francis' position on climate change to encourage governments and the private sector to strengthen their commitments to environment and climate goals. Pope Francis is a high-profile advocate for aggressive action to combat climate change. Through effective collaboration with the Vatican, POS can ensure that USG interests are represented in diverse stakeholders, from governments to corporate leaders, are encouraged to take concrete action to minimize, and so on. So
yeah,
they're just straight up saying here, we are going to leverage Pope Francis's position to ensure USG interests are represented in diverse stakeholders.
So Laudato Si was a CIA document, basically.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know if it's a CIA document, but
Right.
is it part of the leveraging? Like everybody says, oh, is Francis a Freemason? Is he a CIA agent? It doesn't really matter, I think, once you get to the top of all this. There's an agenda. There's a policy that's being pushed, and they're working together. This is why Francis, for 4 years, said not one word of rebuke to Biden.
Yeah.
Over unnatural marriage and abortion, not one word. And on the first day of Trump, he calls his policy a disgrace.
Yeah.
And the USCCBs come out shaking their fists. Why? It's all about this leverage. It's all about this money.
So that's all right. Now, we know the Vatican itself is in a financial hole, right? So, man, I actually thought when Vigano first came out and started talking about the deep state and the deep church, that he was like kind of going, not that he was going too far. I was like, oh, why is he getting into politics? He should really stick to the church. But if anybody has been vindicated, it's his thesis of the deep state and the deep church working together. And this is exactly what you're talking about, right? Them using actors to go and leverage something against the Pope. I'm wondering, do you think even the documents on fiducia supplicans, do you think any of that is part of this leverage? I mean, I know it's just conspiracy and us just being hypothetical, but it kind of seems like all the things Francis has done have something to do with the crap they're pushing all over the world.
Yeah, I don't know how far it reaches into the liturgy, but of course, the voices that are most active in criticism of Joe Biden's presidency and of the pontificate of Francis are from the traditional sector. So it might just be a way to disrupt them.
Well, that's true.
It actually works against them. We just get louder. We just get more popular. People rush in and consume this content and want to know more details. That's like, the book Infiltration that I wrote in 2019, it just continues to fly off the shelves because people, the more they do this, the more people are like, there's something going on here. There's something beneath the surface here. It just actually, I think, hurts them even more. And I think they didn't expect Trump to win. I thought they thought they had it in the bag, or maybe they could cheat it, or they had public support. They're screwed right now.
That's what's so insane, because there is this entire the USAID stuff. Here's kind of what I'm thinking. When Elon bought Twitter, he released the Twitter files.
Yeah.
Elon buying Twitter is what changed the conversation. We all of a sudden, cancel culture ended because you were allowed to say things without getting your account banned. Right. Then he released the Twitter files, which got into the internal communications inside of Twitter. And what we found out was the government actually had basically ex-Intel agents working on the board at Twitter, directing who needs to get their account pulled, whose account should be throttled. They had this censorship program built in at every one of the social media platforms. So when Elon comes in and he blows that all wide open, it kind of destroyed all of their ability to control the narrative, all of their ability to do propaganda. If he goes into USAID and releases some kind of USAID files where you get their internal communication, if you start finding out that Catholic Charities or Catholic Relief Services knew exactly what they were doing, that they knew that this was trafficking, that they understood all this, what are the implications for the church at large if something like that comes out? Like, is that on par with the sex abuse scandals of 2002?
I found, Anthony, over time that whenever I talk about scandals that have to do with money, people just sort of glass over. It doesn't hit them as hard as, the pedophilia and the sex scandals. So I don't think it will as much, but there is so much outrage. And I think what will hit them is the cutting of funding, and they're going to have major shortfalls in money.
And USAID is just the beginning, because a lot of their funding comes from, HHD and other departments. USAID is just the
tip of the spear.
Start.
Correct.
All right, Rob, I sent you 2 clips that I want to play. I want to play the first one just so you guys understand kind of what I'm saying here. Like, if you guys aren't following Mike Benz has done the most outstanding work. He's been on Joe Rogan, he's been on Tucker. This guy has been at this since 2016. Now, kind of what he's found out is in 2016, when Trump gets elected, they went into such a panic mode that they had to reinvent the way they did intel. So they got this fear came over them that there were going to be these populist uprisings, right? You have Brexit happens right around then as Trump gets elected. So what happens is they start this censorship program. We used to push free speech. Now we start pushing censorship. 2020 comes around. Now they have this outward facing program for other countries where they send these NGOs in, they foment revolution. They have riots in the streets, then all of a sudden there's a civil war of some kind, there's an election, the results are really shady, they put their own guy in to win, and they start putting in prison all the people that lost, right? It's play by play the exact thing that happened in America. They have the BLM riots in the street, there's a shady election, Biden gets in.
We know now that USAID money did go to BLM.
It went to
BLM donated that money to Democrats.
So the main thing is the amount of propaganda through the media. Like, they were pumping money into the media to get their story and have their propaganda come out. And then as soon as Biden gets in, what do they start doing? They arrest Rudy Giuliani. They arrest Jenna Ellis. They arrest this. But they start arresting all the people in Trump's orbit, which is exactly the playbook they do. Steve Bannon, they put Bannon in, like, it is the exact playbook they do in other countries. So I want to play this first Mike Benz clip. It's a short clip, but just to show you that we're not crazy talking about these NGOs.
But there's not a single honest USAID program on God's green earth. Everything USAID does is a lie. And so when you see a USAID grant, you know it's a lie. But you don't know exactly the source of the lie. You don't know if they're lying to provide a covert operation on behalf of the State Department. You don't know if they're lying on behalf of a covert operation for DOD, or you don't know if they're lying because they're providing a covert operation as a liaison to the CIA. But you know it's one of those 3.
So think about what he's saying there. If you get a USAID grant, it's nothing to do with charity. There's always some other motive the State Department has. So you don't know if it's the CIA, if it's, whatever one of their intel agencies needs something, right? So they get caught doing like vaccine programs abroad. And what they're really doing is the people that are supposedly giving, healthcare, they're really fomenting revolution in that country, or they're collecting intel for the agencies, right? So he just says there's not a single USAID program that is on the up and up. According to Forbes, CRS, Catholic Relief Services, a nonprofit, received $4.6 billion from 2013 to 2022. Other top recipients include Chemonics International, a for-profit organization that received $4.5 billion. Goes through a bunch of those. CRS has been the subject of controversy in the past for supporting pro-abortion aid programs, as Catholic Vote reported in 2023. The organization attempted to mislead senators by stating the African bishops were not opposed to an AIDS relief program that would provide abortion. 6 African bishops, in fact, signed a letter organized by the conservative advocacy group, the Heritage Foundation, that opposed the Biden-era president's emergency plan for AIDS relief. CRS then claimed that the bishops did sign the letter, but did not understand what they were signing. This is what they do. They go in. Part of the reason that we see our Catholic Charities and Catholic Relief Services pushing contraception and all these things, it's because we are trying to look, even Francis has called it ideological colonization, right? Oh, you want aid from the US? Well, along with that aid is going to come these several things. We can only do this in countries that are open societies, right? So we do it in the West pretty easily. We can do it in Africa pretty easily. You can't do it in Russia, because Russia's a closed society. You can't do it in China. China's a closed society. If we could send our NGOs into China, we'd have thrown China's government. We'd have already overthrown it. But they know what we're up to, so they don't allow us in there. So it's basically they know what we're up to, and they don't allow it. Now, for some weird reason, we let China in our country, and they're basically running the same program we are, and all over the world, letting China run it on us. Rob, let's play that other clip real quick, and then I want to see what you guys think of this, because this is like a perfect example of what he's talking about.
USAID in 2014 was busted running a fake HIV prevention program that served as the cover for undercover intelligence agents to recruit people to try to overthrow their government. Basically, they were operating this web of HIV prevention clinics, and then getting everyone in the clinic and running resources out of this in order to create a critical component of people to take to the streets to overthrow their government. This was busted by counterintelligence, and USAID had to come clean about it. It was a massive scandal. But the question is, if they were doing that with HIV prevention programs in Cuba and in other parts of Western Hemisphere, how many other
public health facilities? That's basically it, right? So
how many other
vaccines? These things are a front. It's like you think we're sending our Catholic charity group out there to do this thing, but in reality, they're collecting. So I mean, I've had people accuse, because I've called Catholic Charities a criminal organization, and people are coming down on me on it. What do you, Taylor? Well, what do you think comes of all this? I don't know how. The bishops get their funding cut off? What happens?
Well, if the bishops get their funding cut off, all of them, there's been every year we see bankruptcies in dioceses across the United States. That happens. We're seeing what they call, merging parishes, which is really just shutting down 3 or 4 and putting them all at the other, right? And this is happening because there's money shortages, and they're selling off real estate, they're selling off schools, they're selling off parishes. It's a tragedy because, our ancestors in the Catholic faith, they were poor people, blue collar workers, coal workers, and they saved up money and they built these magnificent buildings, and now they're just being cast away because people aren't coming because the gospel's not preached. So they're already short on cash. They've been supplementing and balancing their books with this government money. When that money goes dry, I think we could see 25-50% of American dioceses go bankrupt, because they expect that money. And this is why they never preach against Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Barack Obama. They need that cash money. And so if this dries up, they're going to turn to us and say, hey, we don't have any money. Can you guys cut us a check? And we're going to say, yeah, my grandfather died without last rites in the hospital during COVID, and you canceled Easter, and you've been getting all this illegal money for illegal immigrants. And people are going to say no. And I think that will be a very difficult thing for all of us, but it hopefully will be the moment of purification. The fires of purgatory will rage through the church and begin to purify.
I think that's the only way forward, right? It's a strange thing for us as Catholics to be actually happy about this corruption being exposed. But I think we're pretty much past the point where we're worried about what the Protestants think of us. It's like, if we don't clean this mess up, like it's just a miracle that anybody becomes Catholic in today's day and age with the mess that's being presented to them.
Yeah. I mean, we're Catholic because of Jesus and the dogma and the sacraments and the truth, but this is a major distraction. And, you go on X and you see the Protestants, and you're in there quite a lot with them, Anthony. And, and they're just like, yeah, tell me more about molestations. Tell me more about USAID. Tell me more about, your communist agenda in the Vatican. And they just mock us. And, we'll say, well, scripture alone, you all disagree. And then they'll point to us and say, well, you Catholics disagree on what it means to be a Catholic. Yeah. Or you're in disagreement with your Pope. And all of this handicaps our apostolic evangelical witness to the truth of the Catholic faith and the truth of the Catholic Church. And so we are handicapped. The papacy got us into this mess. The only way out is the papacy. We need a holy Pope who comes into the Vatican and on day one starts signing the equivalent of executive orders, which are motu proprios. And he says, the priest turn around during Mass, bring back the altar rails, cancel the Eucharistic ministers, cancel the lay, everything,
Do you
bring back the Latin, bring back communion time? I mean, he could do it all in like 3 hours at his desk, just like just like Trump was with the stacks of the executive orders. It could all be done in 48 hours.
Do you think there will be a Trump effect like that in the church, though? Because that's all I've been thinking about. Like watching Trump's first 2 weeks, all that I have been thinking about is if you ever got a Leo the 14th in there and he was willing to endure being hated, right? It's a white martyrdom. Like you're going to have to just endure.
I don't think he'd be hated.
Not by us.
Even liberal Catholics, if he got up and he said, from now on, no meat on Fridays, no exceptions, except if you're elderly or you have a doctor's whatever, and he signed it. I think even James Martin and the most liberal Catholic in the world, 99% of them are going to conform.
You do?
Yes, I think so. I think so.
Man.
And then if I were the Pope, I would say anyone who does not conform to these motu proprios in 6 months, you lose your bishopric. You're no longer cardinal. And then you'd have a really easy way to just clean the board and say, you guys have had 6 months to adopt. You're still saying weird clown masses facing the people. You're out. And now Bishop Strickland's the Cardinal of Chicago.
Man, that's actually funny. Like if you got somebody in there, but it would take a Bishop Schneider. It would take an Archbishop Vigano. Like, is there even another candidate that would do that? But so set the church aside for a second. Do you think there will be a Trump effect throughout the world where other nations will start to vote more populist and maybe they'll get a Trump-like figure around? Like, are we going to turn this mess around?
We have to have the church. We have to have the gospel. Trump is not enough, as we saw with the appointment of the lady minister preacher. It's not enough. Grace flows downhill. Grace flows from the church to the state. That's the proper ordering. That's Thomism. That's Thomistic. That's biblical. That's Catholic. So we need to get our house in order. We need bishops. Right now there should be dozens of Catholic bishops coming into the White House, being consulted for policy, opening the books, getting all this straight. It's not happening. We need that kind of integration of church and state. I'm writing a book right now called Christian Patriot, and it's setting forth this vision of how can we integrate authentic Christianity with government. And until we have a strong church, though, that's kind of useless. Like, I don't really want Cardinal Cupich at the White House advising Trump what to do. I want Orthodox traditional bishops in these places and an Orthodox traditional Pope who is inspiring the world with dignity, reverence, sobriety, orthodoxy. If we had a Pope Leo the 14th celebrating the traditional Latin Mass televised every day and giving weekly sermons challenging about repentance and transformation of life and the power of Jesus Christ to change you and to deliver you from sin, we would see billions of people converting to the Catholic faith, and Protestants would flock to it. And the devil's smart. I mean, he's done this for a reason. But that's what I think we got to clean our house. And unfortunately for the four of us, there's nothing we can pray our rosaries and we can make podcasts, but I don't think any of us are going to be in that next conclave voting on the next pope. So, we just have to pray and ask the Holy Spirit to intervene and hope I think the next pope probably won't be good. I hate to say.
Oh, man, I keep hearing that. Everybody I ask says that. I
Poor
feel
Anthony,
like,
man.
Well, I did the math. So everybody says, oh, the Asian and the African cardinals are so conservative. Okay, let's say every single one of them is conservative and traditional. They make up about 34% of the conclave. You need 2/3 plus 1 to vote a pope. So even if all of them were in total agreement and they had their Cardinal Sarah or their Cardinal Burke and they push, they're only at 34. They're only halfway there. But if you take all the cardinals from North America and from Europe, you're over 66%. So if the North American cardinals and the European cardinals come together and vote as a block, it doesn't really matter, even if the Asians and Africans are united. So it would really take breaking up the European and American consensus to elect someone outside of that circle. And at this moment, I just don't see it because we've seen no cardinals resist Francis really at all.
Yeah, it's pretty disheartening. So do you think Francis II, or do you think of Pope John Paul III or Benedict XVII?
I think Francis is very disliked amongst people in the Vatican. And you got to remember, cardinals like being cardinals. It's kind of cool, right? And Francis has, in a way, demoted what it means to be a cardinal. Synodality is sort of, if you're a cardinal, you made it to the top. You're at the creme de creme. Synodality and synod of synodality kind of takes away the coolness of it from just a secular, prideful point of view. So I think there's people who don't like Francis. I can see them. It won't be as bad as Francis. I don't know how you could get much worse than him. Yeah. And I think you'll probably see someone say, I'm John Paul III, and try to somehow resurrect that JP2 era, but I don't think it'll be successful because they're so behind in the fourth quarter because of everything that happened under Benedict, and then especially everything that's happened under Francis. Like, how do you relive that moment under John Paul II? So I think it's going to get bad. I think they could elect someone who's old and hope for just like a 2 to 4 year pontificate and regroup, and maybe in that time something good could happen. But
okay, so all right, now here's a little thing I'm worried about. Like, kind of like when something sounds too good to be true, it usually is, right? And we've been on this high for 3 weeks now, which what they did by not letting him win in 2020, which we all know what that means, right? Like, by not letting him win in 2020, what they did was gave him a chance to regroup, learn the way things work, find out who's loyal. Like, if they would have just stifled his second term, and just been a pain in the ass the way they were in his first term, like, they would have just been over. It would have been over with by now. They'd have been able to gather enough support to get rid of him. There would have been a resistance, and they'd have been done with him by now. But by giving him that 4-year period to like really figure things out, they gave him this ability to come in and do all the things he's doing. Now, I'm very, very apprehensive about Israel, what's going on with the Gaza Strip. I'm also, look, as much as I love what Elon did with Twitter, I'm a little nervous with the guy who has every bit of our data through the biggest social media platform in the world, now having access to executive level clearance, and what he's going to do with that. Like, I'm worried about the transhumanism angle. I'm worried about even RFK getting an HHS. Like, I want these guys to be doing what they're doing, but I'm still, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just like so used to losing that I'm just like, I don't know, this can't be real. Like, are you apprehensive about any of this stuff, thinking maybe we're being lulled into something?
Yes. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, 8 years from now, and, it's just like, we were all like, oh, George W. Bush, he's amazing. We all voted for him and rallied and all that. And all these years later, we're like, man, we were so stupid, Yeah. And what will be those moments 8 or 10 years from now? And I definitely think COVID is one of those. And part of that is on Trump. And then I also, with you, I'm the same way. Like, Elon has a lot of power. because of his money, but now also because of his place in the government. And that is a little scary, like, does he have the virtue to do the right thing for 4 years or even beyond 4 years? I don't know. And then the Gaza thing, I'm not as worried about that because my sense is it's just like the 25% tariffs.
Yeah.
To
play.
The story of Trump is he wanted to buy Mar-a-Lago. He made an offer. They said no. So then he went and he bought the land between Mar-a-Lago and the sea and said he's going to build apartments there and block the view. And it ticked him all off. And so then they sold it to him at a lesser price and he ended up getting Mar-a-Lago and the beach. That's how Trump works. It's art of the deal. So, putting up the 25% tariffs, I knew that wasn't going to last more than 30 days because they can't sustain that. He knows that too, but it positions him in the art of the deal to get something along the way. And I kind of feel that this Gaza thing is a similar thing. I don't really see America like having a colony on the Gaza Strip. This is some kind of power play with Israel.
Yeah. I hope so.
But yeah. The Israel thing is a disaster. I've said it before, I'm opposed to the creation of an Israeli state. Definitely opposed to dispensationalism and all the theological justifications that goes into it. It's a giant mess. I don't, unfortunately, know the answer on how to fix it.
Yeah, I look, it's an insanely complex problem. What scares me about it is the flippancy that I see so many Christians and even like some older Catholics who kind of look, we grew up, like you were just saying, right? We all voted for George Bush, right? We all like we voted for Mitt Romney. I was too young, man. We voted for Mitt Romney. Like, we're so awful. But we also listened to Rush Limbaugh. Yeah. And like, I was up until, I would say, a year or two. No, it was more than that. Probably around 2016 is when all like the scales started falling. I had my road to Damascus moment, right? When Trump gets in and you see all the things that were just a facade in front of us. But I would have been the guy arguing, no, Israel's the only democracy we have in the Middle East.
Right.
Israel's our greatest ally. Like, I was that guy. So there's still a lot of guys. Look, we still have guys in the church who think it's still the JP2 era, right? Like George Weigel still writes as if we're in the days where John Paul brought down communism.
I know.
It's a strange thing. So when I watch these people like almost like cheering this on as if I'm like, look, you have Israel and Hamas, or Israel and Palestine. It's like, you don't need to pick a side here. Like, there can be two evil parties. So it doesn't need to be a good guy and a bad guy. There is no moral character in either of these sides here.
It's not a Marvel movie.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, before we go to the other side, I know we got a bunch of super chats in. So why don't we jump over to the super chats and just see, I know the first, somebody asked one right at the beginning before the show even started, Rob. So make sure we go back to that one.
I'm pretty sure this one's meant as a joke, but serious theologians have recently stated the position that in order to get the church in better condition, we need an Italian back in the papacy. Thoughts?
I mean, if he's a good Italian, I mean, obviously over church history, Italians win out when it comes to, most common popes, but not necessarily. And I also think there is a, by going out to the ends of the earth and having someone from China or Australia or Argentina may not be that prudent. So I don't care if he's Italian. I just want him to be Orthodox, to love Jesus Christ, and to display that to the world. And I don't want him to be a celebrity talking on airplanes, giving interviews, hanging outside windows, blessing people. I mean, he can be like the young Pope, just a recluse, eat dinner by yourself, maybe put out one document every 2 years and just say a reverent mass, celebrate the liturgy, pray the divine office, and keep the church united in truth. That's all we need. No more World Youth Days, no more International Day of this and that, and all these groups coming in, and you know what? I would be like, he's the Pope. Like, I don't care if you're Bono or whoever. Like, you don't get to just come over and have these photo ops. Like, he's a sacred person. That all needs to stop. The next
we just need those 30 motor proprios on that first week.
30 motor proprios, and then he just goes takes a nap.
Well, real quick. All right. Let's say the hypothetical Pope Taylor. Like, what's one thing you think you could do? Because you know what? Let's do that on the other side. We'll do that on the other side because I want to do church stuff on the
Italian
other side.
salesman right there.
Well, yeah. If you guys want to see, we're gonna go over to locals. All right. What else we got, Rob?
That was basically it for questions.
All right. I saw a bunch of super chats. All right. So we're gonna go to the other side. I want to talk because I came in to I'm a cradle Catholic, but I reverted right around when John Paul II died. So that was what, 2005?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're about like a year apart coming into the church, but I want to talk about that early period in the church, and then I want to talk about how like you had such a huge impact during there's a lot of stuff I want to get into over there. So if you guys want to come check the rest of the conversation out, we're gonna head over to locals. We do this every episode pretty much, for the most part, and we do a second portion of the show. If you guys aren't already, go sign up for the New St. Thomas Institute. I can't imagine there's a single person in this chat right now that is not subscribed to Taylor's YouTube channel, but go check out Taylor Marshall on YouTube. Is there anything else you want to promote before we jump off?
Yeah, just look for my book this year, Christian Patriot, talking about Christianity, politics, how we can integrate.
When is that coming out?
Hopefully June, July is the due date. So.
We're gonna have to get you back on when that comes out. I can't wait to read that. Can we do like are you gonna have like an early like release it to a couple of people early to help you promote it and stuff?
Yeah, do that.
All right, send that our way. We'll help you do the early promos for that. So all right, guys, we're going over to the other side. We'll see you over there.
Okay, give me a second here.